Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mantalk.ke. Today is another very exciting episode of the London season. You can see our backdrop has changed again in a very different environment, and we're about to have a very interesting conversation with one of Oscar's, I'd say, heroes. That's not a strong word.
It's not a strong word.
One of his heroes. So
yeah.
I'm going to give Oscar the honours of introducing this incredible man in between us, and then we're going to get into the convo. Oscar.
Yet again, I'm very, very pleased to introduce our guest today. This man is my mentor, a hero of the legal system in Kenya, a real champion of the law, and someone who taught me almost everything that I know. Professor Louis G. Francheschi. I have his CV here because it's long. He has an LLB, LLM, and LLD, who is the Assistant Secretary General of the Commonwealth. He coordinates the political, democracy, electoral, public sector governance. Breathe. Not done. Good offices, rule of law, judicial transformation, which is a big thing, human rights, and countering violence and extremism work in the 56 member countries of the Commonwealth. He's also the Commonwealth head of government meeting, conference secretary, and together with the head of the host country task force oversees the organization and negotiations of those meetings. Before that, he was the former dean of Strathmore Law School and the recipient of the 2019 CB Madan Award for Legal Education. It's a pleasure to have you on set, Dr. Franceschi. It is a pleasure to have you here today, and I'm very excited to have you. How do you feel?
Excited. I feel a little bit shy, I must say, because, we do a lot of work behind the scenes, but rarely we are put like this on camera.
Yeah, from our perspective, we rarely celebrate greatness, and we rarely talk about, especially the people who really add value in our lives. And I feel like for a lot of the Strathmore law students, a lot of the people who are watching this from home, who have certain heroes and mentors in their lives, they never get this opportunity to actually have a conversation, especially in front of the cameras, which we will forget about. And so I just wanted to thank you for even accepting and taking our invitation to come and shoot here with you today. The first question that we usually ask on Mantalk is, what is the most positive factor that you have in yourself as a man? And because we have focused on rethinking masculinity online and rethinking the narrative around masculinity, and you've been one of the most impactful men in my life, and that I know. What is that one thing that you find to be the most positive value that you bring to the table as a man?
Well, you see, this is interesting. The most positive thing I bring is women. You see, you can never be, I think, a responsible man if you do not value the powerful impact women had in your life or will have in your life. For example, as human beings, certainly, we are complementary to each other. Okay? And I think the person who made me value really the importance of women and men in many ways was my mother and my father, but my mother in a very special way. I mean, I'm the 8th born of a family of 10, where there are 8 children. I am the 8th one. And then once I grew up a little bit, they adopted twins, a boy and a girl, who joined the family, and we became 10. And that woman was one of the first economists in the country. She was very prestigious, an amazing person. And at home, she always had, despite being a professional woman and of great prestige in the banking sector, she had always time for us. And how she did it, I don't know, but the fact is that she did it. And at home, we all had chores. We had to help. Boys and girls had to mop the floors, wash dishes, wash clothes, etc. Whatever you had to do it, and you had to do it well. And I think it was that kind of upbringing that made me realize, the importance that we are one society. And more than looking at men and women, we have to help everyone. And that help certainly sometimes has to have a bias because sadly women have been more disadvantaged. They have been put in an environment where they are judged by male values, and the solution is not to dilute those values, but to adjust and contextualize. And this is what I feel we have not known how to do as a society. So we are judging now men by women values, kind of, and that has diluted the whole thing and causes great havoc in society.
Wow.
I love that that's the first point that you've given us, because it literally speaks to the essence of what this podcast is about. One of the main reasons we wanted to start this is we think that there's been a bit of a divide in terms of the conversations that are had in silos between women talking about men in a certain way, men talking about women in a certain way, and this platform was supposed to make a space where we can both converse. Our audience is actually largely women. We see them in the comment section, we see them across our platforms. And you speaking about your mother being the first influential woman, and now you're operating at such a high level in terms of the list you just gave us. I would love to know what are the key things she instilled in you that you've carried consistently throughout your career.
Yeah. You know, I think always of three things, which were done in a very natural way. And certainly she had the great support of my father, who was also somehow an important person and a leader in his own right. One was there was no free time, so the importance of making good use of time. As a child, we had no free time. You were seen doing nothing in front of the TV, you were told, hey, what are you doing here? Come on, let's do something. Move this furniture here, clean these walls, paint this.
That sounds like a rough upbringing.
Do sports. But it's interesting because they were the first ones sacrificing themselves. You see, they organize things in a way that every weekend we spent it going to visit the grandmother up country, somehow, or relatives. So we were always outside the house on weekends. And they used to tell us TV only on weekends. But on weekends we were visiting grandmother, relatives, aunties. So it was a trap, but a good trap. And now we value it. The second was no money. Basically, they were well-to-do, they had good salaries, I mean, certainly in many ways privileged, but we as children had no money. They gave us very little money and was enough to have either the sandwich or the Coke or the chips or the juice. You see, or as we say in Kenya, juice. and you never could have the two of them. You see, you had to, I became my joke saying in primary I was a professional beggar because you had to beg here and plenty of barter trade. And you learned really the value of money. That was very interesting. And third was a deep sense of piety. You see, we had no obliged prayers at home. There was nothing like you must do this and this and this. But we saw them praying in their own, I mean, going to church. It's true, church on Sunday was non-negotiable. So we would go, fantastic. And I remember that sometimes during holidays, I may have been 12, 13, my mom would ask me during the week, do you want to go to church with me tomorrow morning? If I said no, fine, no problem. If I said yes, okay, I will wake you up. At 6 in the morning, she would come to wake me up. And then at 6 in the morning as a child, you always change the story. Well, really, I don't want to come. Say, no. You committed yourself yesterday, now you come.
Yeah.
And those three things, I think, were key. And something that I have come to discover after becoming the Assistant Secretary General of the Commonwealth, where I'm constantly meeting presidents, ministers, VIPs, VVIPs, is that that's what many of the leaders in the world have inside. It's unbelievable. What we see of them in the press is not what you see of them as human beings when you meet them. And this can happen from Macron, the president of France, to the king, Charles III, to Chakwera, the president of Malawi, or Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president of Kenya, or Ruto, or Raila. Okay, it's very interesting how you can see in these people incredible use of time, incredible awareness of the importance of money, whether, I mean, the money is spent badly or properly in a country. It's a very complex thing. We tend to think that it's a Twitter issue that 180 characters can resolve the problem of a country. It can't. Okay?
180 characters later, the country is still poor.
It's still poor. You see, it's not so simple.
Yeah.
And then, well, of course, you see these virtues and these desires in most of those leaders, as we see them in very many young people who had the fortune of being brought up by parents who were there, who were present, which brings us also to the issue of the importance of responsible fatherhood and motherhood, or parenthood. Now, something interesting, and here I put a little story. I met Lazarus Chakwera, the current president of Malawi, and we had a conversation, almost 1 hour, very interesting. He was telling me all the, well, challenges he was facing and where he thought we could help him in Malawi from the Commonwealth perspective. Technical assistance, etc., problems of corruption, problems of governance, rule of law, etc. And at the end, and I saw him really visibly shaken and moved by the things he was saying, he said, "Louis, please pray for me." And I told him, "Well, President, you can count on my prayers. I will pray for you." And then he remained like this. And I was looking at him suspiciously, like, what's happening now? And then he opened his eyes and said, "You can begin." Then, well, there and then I had to begin and say a prayer for him. But you see, and you see this in very many leaders. I mean, that realization that they cannot resolve all the problems they have in their hands. And even those who are not believers, so to speak, they realize they need help. Where they get it, okay, that's a different issue. But they need that help, and it is true. I mean, to run a country is not simple. It's not, it doesn't have a formula. You see, sometimes you press the button and nothing happens. So,
And you keep pressing.
And you keep pressing.
The other question I also had, now just talking about leadership, and like, because you sit with presidents, and you start with presidents in each generation. Now, the question I have to ask is, what do you think is the qualities that these people possess, and generation to generation, what do you think has been the difference for each of these leaders and what they mean to us in terms of being in positions of leadership? What do you think are the qualities that each generation has had that have differentiated their regimes?
Yeah. Well, certainly close is a very fluid concept.
Yeah.
I mean, close, I wouldn't say so, but close in the sense that I was very present, let's say, in a country, maturing in a country where presidents were changing. From Moi, I could say that certainly his presidency was long, and there was a huge desire of change. This triggered all these demonstrations in the 90s. But I saw a deep transformation taking place perhaps in the last 15 years of Moi, and more so in the last 10 years after multi-party democracy in Kenya. I remember Gado used to, and if you one day you interview Gado, you should, he will tell you the story, how he used to paint Moi at the beginning as a hand in the corner with a rungu. And then after a few years, it was from the back of the chair, but you could see the hand with the rungu outside the chair. Then later on, he put one of the ministers, Kamoso, as a parrot here next to the chair. A few years more, he turned the chair, and you could see now the profile of Moi. And then later, Moi full body. And after that was Moi all the way. So that tells you the history of the opening up of freedom of the media in Kenya. Because we came from times when, well, you could not mention anything, even in the times of Jomo Kenyatta, of you wouldn't dare to say anything bad of the president, to a time when his son Uhuru Kenyatta was thrown out of Twitter by trolls. You see, they blasted him so much that he just got fed up and walked out of Twitter. So that's a beautiful transformation in a country. And the fact that it happened peacefully, in a way, it's very positive. Certainly, there are always injustices, and there are people who suffer in jail. Gitobu Manyara, who is a very close friend of mine, spent time in jail, and all those injustices should not have happened. But well, that was part of the push for change. Now, of course, with Moi, there was something we are all longing for that was a sort of certainty and stability. Whatever the president said would be done. Perhaps the president should have said more, and more could have been done. But I remember being, for example, in Thika, in a restaurant, a kind of nyamachoma place, and at 9 p.m., everybody turned the chairs to face the TV because they wanted to see news at 9. And it had to be seen because whatever the first 10 or 15 minutes were dedicated to rice. And whatever rice said was done. And that was the directive for the country. So then came Kibaki. And Kibaki 1 was an incredible time for joy and expectation and growth. And really the country somehow grew exponentially during those first 5 years. Kibaki too sadly was tarnished by the post-election violence that left a deep wound. There are two sides to the story, that he did not win, that he won, that he should have resigned, he should have continued. All that is up to the historians and to look into the facts. But there is one thing that remains, and is that the wounds caused by a fratricidal fight where brothers kill each other cannot be justified, and that caused harm to Kenya that still is a little bit with us. Once you taste blood, it's like black coffee. You can easily go back to it. In fact, we are helping now some other countries in matters of elections, and you are very much aware that those countries that have had wars are very shaky in the sense that, they have been exposed to violence, and they have been exposed to resolving problems through violence, and that's a big problem. Then, of course, came the time of Uhuru, where the country saw a change of generational change of leadership, and was a good thing. Perhaps it is true, infrastructure improved, many mistakes were made, and one problem we have always had in the country, in Kenya, and it's not unique to Kenya, certainly is corruption. And sometimes we think that this corruption is due to the president. Well, many times the presidents are isolated. Up there is very lonely, and you discover that. You know, it's very interesting. When we organized, for example, CHOGM is the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda in June. It's a meeting that takes place every 2 years. And these heads of government come together and they have a retreat. It's the only institution that have this type of retreat. It's a retreat where only the leaders get in, only the presidents or prime ministers, and no officials are inside there. It's only them, the Secretary General, and myself helping in representation of the Secretariat, but nobody else, and there are no minutes taken, and we don't speak of what was discussed inside there. Well, the officials are usually in agony because they want to be there. You see, that is their time to access their own head. It's not just a matter of being there for the sake of being there, but you see, presidents are very lonely. And access to a president it's very complicated. In some countries, it's very, very complex. So sometimes you say, well, there's a lot of corruption. The president may not know. You see, and even, for example, when I was in the law school, if you told me that there was corruption, oh gosh, I mean, and you have a few employees, well, maybe 50, 60, 100, but some of them could be doing the wrong thing, and it's very hard to know it. So in a country when there is no culture of honesty, it's very difficult for a president to do what he or she should do. It's very tough. I have really learned a lot looking at it from this perspective, that, well, these are people who really need support and need help and they need solutions. You cannot just issue statements that do not help.
I love when you're speaking about, and maybe people don't realize this apart from the Strathmore reference, you say we when you're talking about Kenya and you talk about Africa, and some people might be confused as to where the we comes from in terms of your story. And I think prior to that we left it at, you know, your mother and your upbringing, but I'm curious to know your journey to arriving in Nairobi and then starting one of the most successful law schools in the country.
The most successful, not the one.
No, sorry, my mistake. Strathmore, I apologize. The most successful, and yeah, that journey there. I'm very curious to know how someone goes from those incredible things instilled that now we're seeing a lot of empathy when you're talking about world leaders or you're talking about situations in government and countries. Like, what was that journey for you, and where did those characteristics help you along that way?
Well, you see, I usually say that I'm French by descent, Venezuelan by birth, and Kenyan by choice.
Amazing. Yeah.
Because my grandparents were French. Certainly they mixed and mingled. One of my grandmothers was African, of African descent. I was born in Venezuela. They had migrated to Venezuela, to Trinidad, Puerto Rico, and the US, and one of them moved then to Venezuela. And well, actually the two of them from mother and father, the two grandfathers. And I was born in Venezuela, and then I moved to Kenya very much in my youth. So I lived in Kenya longer than Oscar, for example. And I worked in the United Nations, certainly in education, did consultancy for the government, in the legal sector. And then the moment came when I was somehow given the challenge of starting a law school at Strathmore University. Why a law school at Strathmore? You see, Strathmore was the first multiracial and multireligious educational institution in English-speaking Africa, which is interesting because back then there were no colleges that were for all races. Education was segregated in schools for Europeans, Asians, or Africans, and also by religion. It was for Protestants, Catholics, Muslims, and Hindus. And Strathmore was the first one which was planned and designed for all, before independence. And actually it was against the law, so a special law had to be passed to allow Strathmore to begin as an experiment. But it was mostly a business, science kind of institution, and then university. So in 2005, we organized an ethics conference on the rule of law and ethics. And there were 500 lawyers. You know, in Nairobi then, there were not so many lawyers, so this could have been perhaps half of the legal fraternity there, and they challenged us. I mean, they challenged the university, and I was put to the task. I was just teaching part-time in Strathmore then. Well, you have to do this, because you organized this conference. And the whole process began. Patricia Cameron-Bote joined Strathmore. She did great work in the curriculum, aspects of the curriculum, and talking to people, putting the place somehow, building the airport for us to take off. And one day she told me, well, you have to be the dean. And I say, why me? I cannot. I am your student. And she said, no, if I said so, you can. And a great woman of very magnanimous and very motherly at the same time. I mean, very impressive person. And well, I took on the challenge and we began the law school. We were originally, as a school itself, it was a little office in just one of the buildings, and we were 3 people. So at the beginning it was Jacobino, George Kimoso, and myself. And we started making the plans, and then of course, I mean, there were people like Ancotoña, who had been doing groundwork, and Elizabeth Kachenga, who then eventually left to do her PhD, Rosemary Baluto, and quite a number of people who helped us. And we started interviewing people. But we had a key idea. A law school, a modern law school, is like a mobile set. Okay? It needs to be like an iPhone. It needs to have good hardware, okay? where you have the proper kind of curriculum, the lecturers, the facilities. I mean, these are things that are very important, give stability and durability, but then you also need the software, where you have to make it usable, engaging, likable, and fun. And this is something many law schools and lawyers, we forget, that life is not just about somehow vomiting articles of a constitution or law, but you have to make it likable also, because justice is a very beautiful thing. It's very attractive. And this software was the academic trip abroad, then the laptop project, where every student got a laptop, and then the foreign language that was taught in the university. Apart from doing law, you learn Chinese, Spanish, German, or French, which was very important for a professional. Originally Japanese as well. And they invited professors, people who came from Harvard, from Oxford, from the best universities in the world, to teach or co-teach with a local person. Yes. Then, of course, we could not pay these people a salary, so we paid for the trip, accommodation, and a safari. For them, it was a fantastic holiday, and for us, it was an amazing win, because you brought Harvard into Nairobi, or Oxford, or Cambridge, or Yale, or whatever it was, Notre Dame, and the like.
So technically, Dr. Franceschi, can we say Strathmore students have a Harvard education?
You know, a Harvard professor put it in a beautiful way. I don't believe it is true, but he said, actually the truth is that Harvard is the Strathmore of the US. We say, well, but it will be pretentious to say so. They have 200 years of history being at the top, so we have 190 years to go.
Yeah, but
they have.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think I learned from you, Dr. Francheschi, isn't just your tremendous humility, which I've learned very little, but also the international perspective that we tend to have to be in those classrooms. And I think that even to think global. When I started the program, I was just, a scoundrel from South Sea. Just a guy, we were just living life. And after 4 years, it really changed my life through the opportunities that came through Strathmore and its various programs. And I just wanted to ask, what was your vision for Strathmore, and do you think that it's on its way to achieve it?
Yes, it's on its way. And the idea really was to produce not just good lawyers, but lawyers who are good. Good
that's
people.
What I wanted you to say. That's the one I wanted you to say.
We haven't managed in some cases. No, but you see, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, we wanted good people, because that has been part of the drama we have in our profession, that we have been creating good lawyers in the sense that they are good manipulators, good thieves, good liars.
Yes.
And no, you really want people who are good, who are looking for justice. who are trying to get people out of trouble, who are trying to get justice done, who are trying to be fair, and that's the idea. Any current or former student of Strathmore who doesn't have that in mind, I would tell them, well, you are a disgrace to the school, to the university, and to your country and your family. Because parents invest a lot. I mean, I have seen cases, dramatic cases, people who sold land, cars, everything for their children to be there. And well, luckily we managed to give a good number of scholarships, 20% or so of our students were on scholarship. I don't know the numbers now. I mean, I left in 2019, but it was beautiful to see cases like, well, I give you this example of Teteng Taloka, who was a South Sudanese child soldier, former child soldier. His family was killed when he was abducted, when he was 9 or so. He fought in the SPLN army with the rebels. Then he escaped. He ended up in Kakuma. He ended up getting a scholarship. He came to Strathmore. He did fantastically well. And he did his master's in Geneva. He is a successful professional. And you put Teteng, when he was before university, and you say, well, the Teteng that left university were two different people. Okay? And all that thanks to quality legal education. And he wrote a beautiful piece with one of his classmates, who was a lady who had grown up in Nairobi from a good family, well-to-do, kind of, good education, one of the best schools in the country. And the arguments they were putting across was really, she has this background, I have this background as a child soldier, as a posh kind of girl, city girl, and from now on whatever happens depends on the use we make of this quality legal education. And it's very true. What happens from then on depends on the use they make of that quality education, which is an equalizer. Yeah. So that's a powerful message. Good education is an equalizer. And for those who say, well, I am like this because my background is useless and my parents never took care of me, well, but watch out, because if you make the effort, like the Teteng, and you make it to a good place and you have quality education, you can take off.
Yes.
I think if your mission with Strathmore was to make good people, I think I can attest to that. I've gone there a few times and spoken and interacted with some of the students, and their view of the world and their level of like acumen and excitement just for what's even after uni and what they're doing at that point is incredible. And also having a co-host that has gone to Strathmore, I think you've achieved that. I want to jump into the next chapter now of your life, because I think you smashed it when it comes to making a fantastic event.
But before you jump, something important. You see, it's not to consider that if you went to Strathmore, you will be successful. If you didn't, you don't. No. Something we wanted to do, and in this we team up with all the deans in Kenya, was what we are doing in Strathmore should help the whole country, all the law schools, to put up their game also. And they did. I mean, Nairobi University, that was at those years in a little bit of disarray, really, and Patricia went to become the Dean of Nairobi, and Kabarak as well, and Kisii University. We were very much, all of us, private and public universities in communication and experiences. We were exchanging experiences. So it benefits not only Strathmore, but the whole legal. I hope it continues, and it does, because I know Peter is doing a great job, and the competition is a sane competition. It's not destructive, but constructive.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, so literally you've been the gold standard and then everyone else is that way.
Yeah.
I want to talk about now where we're sat, we're in the Commonwealth House where you work. I'm very curious as to now, with this chapter of your life, if you could give context to the viewers that are watching, what the Commonwealth is, and then specifically your role, because I want to jump into that and how they can extract value from such an institution. So first off, just for someone watching that's not familiar, what is the Commonwealth as of today?
Yeah. Wow, the Commonwealth is friendship with a purpose. I always summarize it in that way. Why? Because this is an institution that is the product of the historical collapse of the British Empire. When the empire came to an end and countries started getting independence, which was a progressive kind of from India all the way forward, they did not want to disassociate themselves from the UK as the creating power and from the king or the queen as the head, partly due to affection for the queen, because she had been in a way understanding the signs of the times and she made it easy for them, partly because they had grown a system of education, of governance, of laws that were very common, common law. And they wanted to learn from each other and to help each other. So they decided, as they got independence, to remain associated. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Australia, Canada, South Africa, somehow first. And then all the other countries started joining. So today, it's an international organization of 56 countries, 2.5 billion people, 60% under the age of 30, who are together because they help together each other somehow to work democratically towards development. So it's very interesting. You have to be a democracy to be in the Commonwealth, and of course a democracy is not sustainable without development. Right. So those two issues of democracy and development drive everything we do here in the Commonwealth. It's not a money-giving organization, but we give technical assistance, advice, mediation. We all help each other, and there is plenty of peer review among countries. It's interesting because the house we are in now is Marlborough House. Marlborough House was a palace that the Queen, Elizabeth II, decided to give to the Commonwealth so that the Commonwealth would survive the turmoils of the times. What happens in the past is the following, that there were 3 men, African men, and 1 white woman who actually made the Commonwealth to be what it is today. Those 3 men were Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, Julius Nyerere from Tanzania, and Kenneth Kaunda from Zambia. And the woman is Queen Elizabeth II. These 3 presidents came to London at some point or through different forums to say, we are leaving the Commonwealth. Why are you leaving? Because we did not join this institution to be part of the Foreign Office. That's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the UK. Then why are you not? Well, because we were colonies. We got our independence and we don't want to be part of this ministry, so we are leaving. No, please, don't leave. And the Queen had the brilliant idea of, I give you the palace, take it and this is your headquarters. So that way, it's an independent organization. And this made these presidents realize, well, fantastic. Now here there is value, because we are sitting at the table with our former colonizer, but discussing on the same terms. Right. It took a lot of humility from the UK to agree, okay, to sit at the table with the same power as Nauru, that has a little country in the Pacific with 11,000 people, and one vote, the UK, and well, and say, yes, let's make decisions together. So in the Commonwealth, India with 1.4 billion, Nigeria with 200, Kenya with 50, the UK with so much money, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Well, all of them have the same power that Dominica, Nauru, St. Kitts and Nevis, Vanuatu, Tuvalu, Solomon Islands, which are also members. And that's a beautiful history. It's also important to realize that even though countries are driven by, in some ways, self-interest, and the bigger the country, the bigger the self-interest. In CHOGM 2022 in Rwanda, somehow the modern Commonwealth mutated into a contemporary Commonwealth. I mean, into something, a new beast, sort of, which is beautiful, because, as you know, the big and rich countries, UK, Canada, Australia, India, were very, very, very interested. I mean, practically they went there to get a new Secretary General elected. And it was the little countries who opposed that move. And it was the little countries like Tuvalu saying, no, she has done good work for us, and Zambia and Guyana and etc. say, no, she has done good work for us, we want her to continue. And they won. And as much as we could see, well, this was a defeat for Boris Johnson, who was then the Prime Minister, say, well, not really. This was a win for all, because it set the new momentum in an organization that is living to the days, to the challenges of the days. We cannot continue. The days of Empire 2.0 are over. And of course, it's very important for the rich and mighty and big countries to realize that, hey, the world is shifting, powers are shifting, and we have to really get ourselves together to succeed. And this is what the Commonwealth is. And incidentally, after this CHOGM in Rwanda, the UK and Australia and Canada and India, all these countries that may not have been agreeable, Jamaica, who had a candidate, have come much closer. And they want, okay, let's do it together. Let's move together and make sure this works, which is a beautiful thing.
It is, and thank you so much for that story. I just wanted us to focus on the future of the Commonwealth and developing economies and their role in the future. This episode was designed to be primarily focused on the youth, and I wanted us to talk a little bit about the youth in those developing economies. What do you think is the future for those young people in these developing economies, and what opportunities are there for these youth moving forward, especially with the Commonwealth?
Yeah. It's interesting. You see, when you say the youth, I think I stopped believing in the youth, because to me, when you see that term youth was very condescending. In the old days, we would use it as the guys who know nothing. So let's take care of them because they don't know. Now, really, I mean, a 14-year-old no more than a 50-year-old 30 years ago. See, I mean, these kids have information. They know what they want somehow. It's incredible how the speed of information and availability of information has made people mature, but certainly you have to mature in an all-rounded way, and this is where we have to work at. But when we say the youth, they are too young, I say, hey, the youth know more than, many of them know more than me, certainly. I mean, by far, if you speak to them about AI, blockchain, etc., they can tie me up in blockchain, okay, and I will have nothing to say. So, which is a beautiful thing, but it's also a beautiful challenge. So we have to move faster, okay? I see the problems of young people today in two ways. One is the lack of patience. We want everything and we want it now. And if they pray, they say, God, give me patience, and I want it now. Okay? Why? Because that's the Twitter mentality. Okay, I don't agree with this. You are an idiot. And then I've told you, now I'm happy because I told you you are useless. But this doesn't resolve the problem. So these are things we have to work at. That's true, we need that patience had a reason. And that's why governments don't change so quickly and problems in society take time because good wine takes time to mature. And governments are, in that sense, are like wine. You see, they take time to change systems and governance. But it's true, we are living in systems that are built for the past. Governance, justice, bureaucracies are things that have no longer place in this world, in the ways we build them for the past. And the second thing is a challenge which I think is the most critical one, and is the lack of culture of reading. I mean, that culture of reading has been really done away with, and this is a big problem. Some young people of the Commonwealth were asking me last Friday in a meeting we had, a huge meeting, hey, how come all these leaders, too many old leaders are from 60 onwards? I say, well, and if you are 50, not to say 40, they see you as too young. So, well, look, it is true that we have to be insist on the importance of leaving things for others to take on and to build on what we try to do. But part of the problem could be also that if you don't read, you don't have ideas. And if you don't have ideas, you don't have ideals. So who are the ones governing us? The guys who have ideals. Because they have been reading, they have been studying, they have been analyzing problems in depth. So we have a big problem there with the culture of reading. People can spend the whole day in their computers or phones, and you will never ever touch a book, even an e-book. And that's a big problem, because it doesn't give you the ideas that somehow mold you as a leader and makes it sustainable. I mean, you may have those leaders who are like smoke in the air. Oh, fantastic, celebrity. Yeah, but the celebrity was a celebrity because it was a passing cloud. Then after they go, nobody knows, and they don't leave anything behind.
What do you see? You seem to have a very good grasp on youth and their mentality and what they can do to be better, like in society, and to lead. But I'm curious to know, like now with technology like that you've mentioned, what do you think the future leaders look like now with implementing technology, a vast array of knowledge? What does the next, say, Prime Minister, President look like, and what do you think the kind of things they're doing in their life now will help them to propel themselves to that level? I asked that because I was actually in Strathmore, and a kid came up to me saying, I want to go into politics, but I don't know whether to use social media or if I won't be taken seriously. So I'm curious to know what kind of path they should be forging if they want to be the leaders of tomorrow.
Well, certainly, as I said, one of the key things is read. Read, not to become a bookworm, but biographies, history, interesting books put out, and classicals, Animal Farm, Democracy in America, okay, To Kill a Mockingbird. All those are books that, gosh, if you want to be a leader, you should be at least conversant with, well, anyway, and many others. But that is one thing. The other thing I would say is use of time. The three things I said at the beginning. Use of time, use of money, and piety, some sort of sense of the supernatural, of why are we here for. And then I always tell people also something I learned from the Secretary General. Do not ask yourself what you want to be. Ask yourself what you want to do. So it's not, I want to be Prime Minister, I want to be President, I want to do, I want to change this country, I want to change the world, I want to change society, I want to make sure that people can live in Corogosho in a dignified way, then of course that's how you begin the change. Okay, and that will take you places, but it's what you want to do for others and not just for yourself.
It's a fantastic answer. I want us to move now from the youth in terms of general information around leadership and to be a bit more specific and to lean into the question that he asked around political participation and civic participation. So according to the Commonwealth's Youth Development Index, this is the year of youth, and we're trying to be more inclusive and sustainable. One of the things that stood out for me was including the youth in government and including the youth in decisions that are, affecting, society in general. I don't know how well we're doing in terms of how well are member states doing that. How well are they including the youth in these decision-making processes and bodies? Because the justification in that document was it reverses negative trends. As a Kenyan, I'm not sure that I've seen enough of that. So I wanted to know, is this a trend that goes on in other developing economies, or is this just a specific issue? And how can we change that and reverse it?
Nigeria, the recent elections in Nigeria show us how really badly we are doing with youth involvement in politics, in democracy. Because, the abstention levels were very huge, at least looking at the statistics from the Electoral Commission. This is a very serious issue because this means we are not inspiring young people. And what's happening now is when we say, hey, we have to involve the youth in decision making, then we go ahead and organize a youth wing of a party or the youth parliament, or we come up with youth conferences. And sometimes we put a bunch of, and here I am guilty as charged, we put a bunch of old people to tell us about youth, okay? Which is not the idea. The interest, the approach is different. So what would I say? And in this regard, I think also the civil society needs to do more. You see, civil society, many young people who have ideals feel like joining civil society because that's an avenue. Hey, wait a minute, but civil societies can help resolve a problem, but they are not the decision makers. They are not involved in the decision-making process. Yeah. They can advise, but they don't decide because that's their nature. Okay? They put pressure, but they are not the ones who decide. So I think young people have to gather the courage to join politics. Say, oh, it's corrupt and you need a lot of money. No, it is not true. If you have ideas and if it's your vocation and it's your call and you have the talent, hey, you can get yourself elected. In most of our countries, it will be like that. If you really want, you can get yourself elected. There is a problem, it's true. If you go for politics without having anything else, you are vulnerable because you can be easily manipulated. So it's true, finish your studies or perfect your trade. You could be a bus driver, but be a very good bus driver. So if one day you lose an election, you can go back to driving and you are not in the streets. But certainly perfect your trade. And then if you think it's your call, go for some sort of political office. And don't aim at being president because I'm young and no, but you can decide to be a county assembly member, an MCA, and that's perfect. At least you start making inroads if that's your vocation. But certainly we are all called to be leaders in our own right, whether it is in the political space or in other spaces, and we have to discover.
I can hear somebody on the other end of the screen saying, okay, it's all well and good saying, do for other people. But if we're looking at someone like Kenya, you've got a very high literacy rate of 80+%. but their immediate concern for a lot of people is, I'm unemployed. How do I start thinking about other people and doing for other people when 90% of my day is surviving, getting my fundamental needs, right? What would you say as a word of encouragement for them in terms of how their future can look if that's their present?
Yeah. You have to think outside the box. You see, I think the days when I went to a good primary school, a good secondary school, good university, and I got a job are over. Okay? And the world is full of university graduates who are looking for jobs or doing very basic jobs for which they were not trained for. I have one example, and this comes from Kenya. Gatia Muhoya, a young fellow, brilliant. Well, he is not exactly employed. I mean, he has employed himself. And he decided to come up with a concept. It's a game, it's called Badiliko, at least the concept. And they designed a political game that is like fantasy soccer, but it's fantasy politics, kind of. So you choose your own cabinet, and depending on the ratings of the ministers, you go winning or not. And now they have gone even to a stage where you can create fictional characters, I mean fiction characters, where you create your own perfect kind of government. And depending on what's happening in society and how decisions are being making, you move on points and you can bet even with your friends, etc., etc. And this has algorithms that connect you directly to the politicians, to the decision makers. And they get to see what you are thinking, what the problems in this part of the country are, what the young people are thinking, and they can connect back to them. They can send an SMS or messages, WhatsApp, and connect through this program. Well, he was offered $250,000 for this by a politician. I said, no, I don't want to sell it because I want this can go for the whole world. I mean, it can be something that really put politicians somehow, or young people in the space of politicians. Well, you see, wow, this initiative came from an unemployed young 23-year-old in Nairobi, in Kenya. Well, you see, I have always said, look, unemployment, it's a problem, but don't look at it as a social problem. Oh my God, no one is employing me. Also look at it as a personal problem. Where have I failed that nobody in society sees the value of having me in their office, in their trains, in their bus, in their houses or wherever, in their libraries? So it's also my own issue. So when I speak of the youth having let down, yes, but maybe I am part of that let down. I have let down myself because I don't do what it takes. And of course, as you know very well, the virtual space has opened up so many possibilities. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are deep inside the bush, 100 kilometers away from Turkana, because there is Wi-Fi. Why? Because Safaricom and Airtel made sure there was Wi-Fi all over the place because you have M-Pesa, which was an incredible invention. And if you have Wi-Fi, you have access. Well, and say, well, but I don't have that money for that access. Work hard and get some money for access, and that access itself can create greater access, as it is happening to you guys, because you are doing a business through access somehow.
Yeah, that's true. I want us to now move towards the end of the episode because Dr. Francheschi, again, you have forgotten the cameras, you see. And I wanted us to talk about mentorship and the mentors in your life and the people who you've interacted with that have had the most impact. Are there any people you'd like to mention, friends, family, who've poured into your cup so that you can pour into ours as much as you have?
Well, of course, apart from family, you know, my teachers were great mentors, some of them. And here I have to thank some of them because, you know, There are some teachers who don't get too interested in this issue. But also, I feel sometimes bad because I say, well, I did not do enough for some of the people who came across my path. But anyway, those are the limitations of human beings because, well, you have, anyway, that's life. But yes, the teachers, because they inspire you, they inspire me to do great things. With some of them, I kept closer contact. With some of them, not so close, but I can mention here three of them, three specific ones who impacted me in different ways. PLO Lumumba, and we are friends, great friends. He says tough things about the Commonwealth, but it's good. I also tell him fantastic. I mean, I want to hear the truth. Others may not be happy. Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, because he was a good teacher. Perhaps he says a bit too many rough things nowadays in social media, but anyway. And Ojuang, J.B. Ojuang, Justice Ojuang, who also really was a great help. That's in my time in university. Outside university, oh gosh, I could name a whole village of people, because you never become who you are alone. I mean, there are no loners in the world, lone rangers. That's only in the movies. Gosh, the incredible amount of people who have assisted me, I have spoken to me, have advised me. It's uncountable. I mean, many people really who helped me in all possible ways. Yep.
Yeah. I have another question, just follow up on that.
But by the way, a very simple type of mentor, also people who work with you and sometimes under you, who tell you the truth. It matters so much.
Yeah.
In the law school, I am so grateful to those people working under me, because, well, if you are the dean, you are the boss. And
Yeah, but you're
who,
the coolest dean.
who-
You are so cool.
well, but you see, people who tell you, hey, this is not so cool, this is cool, this you shouldn't have done this, you should have. And they thought sometimes, oh my God, maybe I'm abusing, he will get annoyed with me. That was incredible. I'm so grateful. And people from the reception to the vice dean, on all that spectrum. So you have to be close enough to people for people to tell you really, not what they think you want to hear, but what you should hear. And that is a fantastic type of mentorship. That's why I tell presidents or ministers, when I meet them and we strike somehow a kind of closer friendship, is make sure you have people who will tell you the truth, mean what you don't want to hear, who will criticize you in a positive way, not just to criticize and not in front of others, but one-to-one. Look, this shouldn't have done like this, there is a better way of resolving this. This helps a lot. And it's what I have seen in great leaders. I mean, people like Willie Mutunga, he would be very happy when you criticize him and told him, hey, you know, CJ, this and this. David Maraga, Martha Kome, we have been very lucky in Kenya in terms of CJs, because they really want to hear and they wanted to be told somehow.
I have just a second. I have one question that I've been sitting on and I've been wondering. I think anyone who meets you wonders. In your phone, there's this app called WhatsApp. Which WhatsApp group is the funnest one? The WhatsApp group in your phone, because there's probably presidents in a WhatsApp group.
No. No, actually, the presidents, you know, it's interesting. As you meet more and more people, you run away from groups.
Oof.
Because there are so many groups. And so, I mean, you can, now we have been sitting here, let's say for an hour. I will check my phone and maybe I find 150 messages. Okay. Then, of course, the groups, but
If you were to make
one of the groups that is fun, I think there are 3 groups which I find myself going to again and again. One is my family group, okay, because many interesting things and jokes and discussions happen there. The second one is the group of people we were together in university. And then there are many jokes. And you know, when you have grown together with a generation, there are jokes only you can understand somehow if you are in that generation. And the third one is a group of lawyers in Nairobi, miscellaneous, created by Gitowi Manyara. And it's a fantastic group because I am quietly as an observer, you know, now I cannot give too many political opinions, but you learn a lot. I feel I don't need to read newspapers because everything passes through there and it's very informed opinions, and sometimes there are really interesting debates that take place in that group between top lawyers. I mean, it could be Muite discussing, arguing with Kanjama on a topic, and they are really, and you read the discussion and say, wow, with this I could write a fantastic article, but it will be their article, so I don't write it.
I think, so there's just one, I have my last burning question as well, because we've talked a lot of time about leaders, and we talk about politics and encourage people to go into politics to make change. And maybe we'll differ in terms of our opinion here. I've had conversations a lot of the time with my friends, and the skepticism you've mentioned about politics and how to make change is very ripe, especially among like my group and my age group. You've said to go into politics, but would you recommend, because some of the people I've seen are people that have started something on a grassroots level, made impact without doing anything to do with politics, and they've made a change within their neighborhood or society that way, and they felt very much fulfilled. So in your opinion about change and impacting and, like you mentioned, doing, do you think it starts top down or do you think it starts grassroots? Because I think some people would be confused as to which direction to go if they actually want to do, like you mentioned.
I think it starts grassroots up. If you top down, there will never be real change because you say, well, I will change things when I get to the top. It will never happen. Even if you get to the top, you continue doing the same. It's a habit. You know, there are people like Boniface Mwangi. Hey, they have been agents of change. He lost an election, and maybe was beaten hands down. But Boniface Mwangi has left a mark. Okay, and he has done great things through moving people and mobilizing people in his own ways, making mistakes. And sometimes we have spoken, hey, Boniface, this was a mess, man, don't say these type of things. But many times, certainly, and with a genuine interest in the good of the people. So you have people like that who go somehow building change. So it's not change in formal politics, but it's change at all levels of society. One little thing, and I think with this, I don't know if we finish, but I went one day to an embassy here in the UK, and I found a long queue of people outside. And there were lawyers, engineers, doctors, sweeping roads, doing menial work. I say, it's a pity. This country needs these people. I mean, NHS is desperate, National Health Service is desperate for doctors and nurses. And here you have a doctor who is cleaning streets because he's an immigrant and doesn't have the papers. Then I was here in this office, and I was told there is a former judge of the High Court in Afghanistan who wants to see you. But they are not in the Commonwealth, so maybe there is no need to say, hey, wait a minute. Afghanistan, and this was after the mess had happened when the Western forces had left and the Taliban took over. Then I said, this is a humanity issue, let her come in. And she came, a lady. She said, well, look, I ran away in one of the last planes that left Afghanistan because I am a woman, and a judge, and a woman judge in the Taliban is a death sentence. So she had to run for her life. But she left her family behind. And now she says the family knows, the government knows who my family is, and they're in danger. So I need help. Then what are you doing? Well, I'm trying to do menial work. She was doing small jobs here and there in London. Then this, you see, there are two possibilities: to lament and criticize, and then you remain there, or to do something. Then, okay, I don't have the financial power to do something about it, or the political muscle. I cannot go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You see, I'm an international institution person. I cannot go to a country and tell them, you have to admit these people. But then I go together with 2-3 other entrepreneurs, people who have done great things before. One of them is a Kenyan lady, young professional, who sold her last startup here in London for almost 20 million pounds. Okay? A lady who created a business and sold it for almost 20 million pounds. Okay? And this is just one of the businesses she has created. And I told her, look, we need to do something. Can we do something? Well, we are trying to see, and we are putting together a group of huge possible donors, people who are interested, people who share the ideals, to see how we can match these migrants to the needs of the market and make it possible through agreements with government to give them the permit, the work permit, so that they can at least do something while they get their validation of their degrees. So maybe this lawyer cannot be a lawyer, but could be a clerical guy. Or this doctor could be a nurse while they get. So we are working it out, and so far it's moving forward. But you see, these are the type of things that I think we all can do. It's just a matter of, it has taken us longer than we wanted, but at least we can make a little contribution to the situation, the dramatic situation of many migrants. And this will be the pilot, the UK, but then later this can expand to any other countries.
So I have the final question, and thank you so much, Dr. Francheschi. I will refrain from saying too much, I might cry on camera. But thank you so much for your leadership, your mentorship, and for just being an all-round, just fantastic individual. When I've been sent by the Pioneer class to say thank you, because all of us were set on this path that we are on primarily because of your decision to start a law school. I wouldn't be the young man I am if it wasn't for that decision you made. I would be, like I said, a scoundrel. But you taught us culture, you taught us to carry ourselves with dignity, and you wanted us not only to be good lawyers, but to become lawyers who are good. I have now transitioned into finance and business, but the values that you have kind of put in us and the value you brought to us and the value you bring to others is something we'll continue to do. And so I just wanted to thank you. This podcast will not be here if you are not there.
Thank you. And many other people who helped me to do this, the university itself.
Yes. So the final question I have is one book, film, or piece of content that you found has inspired you and has driven you that you'd like to share with the rest of the world.
One book that inspired me was The Iron Column by Taylor Cadwell. I found it fascinating. Maybe it's that I read it at the right time in my life. A very good friend who was a lawyer told me to read it. Before I joined university, and it's the novellated history of Cicero, the Roman lawyer, and I found it very inspiring. And that somehow say, well, I want to do something like this guy achieved, because somehow the authors put it in a very beautiful way. Nothing extraordinary, but just simply moving step by step and making sure you fill all the gaps in life.
I think that's a good title for this episode. The Iron Column.
As a nod to the book.
Maybe. Yeah. I think I might title it that.
No.
Well, perhaps the publisher has the copyright and you have the right to copy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed our our questions. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. We've really learned a lot, and thank you for creating such an amazing co-host through your institution. He's been very competent on this journey, so yeah, thank you for your time as well. I know it's very valuable. Guys watching this, I hope you've enjoyed this episode
Have as much
as we've enjoyed making it.
because we've had a ball.
Absolute ball.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week on Mantalk.ke. Thank you so much.